I used to think I was the king of this world. People called me Marcus Langford, the youngest CEO in the history of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Every room I walked into fell silent. A single smirk from me could make an entire boardroom tremble. I didn't just run a company, I controlled people. Every party was a stage, and the employees, they were just the audience in my theater of power. And then, I chose a new target. An old janitor, hunched over, sweeping the floors like he'd never lifted his head in his entire life. I just wanted to have a little fun. A harmless prank to remind everyone who really ran the place. But I didn't know, that one joke would dig the grave for my entire career. Don't forget to subscribe, because you won't believe what happened next. When I made that joke, the whole room burst into laughter. Everyone laughed, except for him. He just smiled faintly. A strange smile, half pity, half waiting to watch me destroy myself. I still remember that look. No anger, no fear. Just a cold silence that sent chills down my spine for a second. I tried to brush it off. Just a janitor, I told myself. But the week after, everything started to slip. I passed him in the hallway, and he always bowed politely, yet his eyes seemed to look right through me. Stranger still, I saw him reading something during his break. Not a cheap newspaper. It was an internal financial report from my company. I laughed. Someone must have left a copy behind, and the old man just got curious. But that night, I checked my email. There was an anonymous message waiting. "You think you control everything?" it said. No subject line, no sender. Just a photo, taken from a low angle at that same party, when I humiliated him. I started to feel short of breath. I ordered the IT department to trace it. Nothing. They said there had been a strange IP accessing our internal servers. The source? The janitor's basement cleaning room. I laughed out loud, but inside, my thoughts were chaos. Could a janitor really hack into a billion-dollar company's network? Impossible. But then I remembered his eyes that night. Calm. Certain. As if every joke I made was just the opening act of a play he'd already written. I decided I would expose him. In front of everyone. I would make him the biggest punchline in the history of this company. What I didn't know, was that in doing so, I was already walking straight into the most sophisticated trap of my life. Stay tuned for the next part, because what happens next will make you think twice before underestimating anyone again. I couldn't sleep for nights after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the janitor's smile. That smile carved itself into my mind. I started paying more attention to him. And then I noticed, he never left the building on time. He was always the last one there. Always going down to the basement, the one place no one was allowed except maintenance staff. One night, I decided to follow him. I stood behind the cold steel door, listening to every step he took. It wasn't the sound of a broom. It was the sound of typing. I peeked through the crack. There wasn't a mop on the table. There were 3 computer monitors glowing in the dark. Lines of green code rained down the screens. And then, I saw my name appear. My personal file. My financial data. My hidden accounts. All unlocked. I kicked the door open. But when the light hit the room, it was empty. Only the office chair still spinning, as if someone had just stood up seconds earlier. Then I heard it, laughter. A low, chilling laugh echoing through the empty basement. The next morning, I called a full security meeting. We checked every system log. Everything had been wiped clean. No IP. No footage. It was as if the whole night had never happened. But then one of the IT guys went pale and pointed at the screen. A single line of text had appeared in the system folder: "You can't delete what I built." The entire room went silent. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. I shouted for them to trace the message, but no one dared to touch the keyboard. And then, it happened. Every screen in the conference room flickered to life at once. A face appeared. The janitor. He stared straight into the camera. Didn't say a word. Just smiled. And then the screens went black. I stood there, cold sweat dripping down my collar. At that moment, I still thought I was dealing with a madman. I had no idea. I had just awakened a past I thought I'd buried forever. I started losing my mind over this cat and mouse game. A janitor hacking into my data? No. I was going to show him who really ran the game. That's when I came up with the humiliation game. A full company meeting, broadcast live to every department. I was going to turn him into a joke, in front of the entire corporation. I told HR, invite him on stage. Tell him it's an employee appreciation ceremony. I wanted him to feel seen, just so I could crush that pride in front of hundreds of people. Have you ever watched someone in power humiliate another person just to feel strong? I was that person. The day came. He stepped onto the stage. No trembling. No bowing. Just that same quiet smile, as if he already knew exactly what was coming. The spotlight hit his face, and for a moment, it looked almost otherworldly. I began the intellectual challenge. A CEO asks. A janitor answers. Sounds funny already, right? My first question was about the company's history. He answered every detail, down to the exact year. I raised an eyebrow. I switched to questions about finance, expansion plans, stock strategies. He answered them all. Even gave deeper insights than my senior advisors ever had. The room started buzzing. Whispers spread through the crowd. All eyes were on him. I forced a laugh. Where did you get all that information? I asked. He looked straight at me and said slowly, I'm only saying what I once wrote. The whole room froze. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. A chill crawled up my spine. I tried to smile, but my lips wouldn't move. He gave a slight bow, still wearing that calm, knowing smile. This game, he said softly, I've been playing it for a long time, Marcus. I took a step back. The lights seemed too bright. The whispers faded into dead silence. And I didn't know it then, but that meeting was the beginning of my downfall. The air in the hall froze after his words. I'm only saying what I once wrote. Wrote what? Wrote when? I forced a laugh, trying to stay calm. Hundreds of eyes were on me, like I'd just been stripped bare in front of them all. I fired back questions, trying to turn it into a joke. But he didn't laugh anymore. He just looked at me, with eyes that had seen too much, eyes that knew the secrets I'd buried. Did you really forget, Marcus? He asked. Who laid the first brick of this company? The question cut through my mask like a blade. People turned to each other. Some whispered. One old secretary covered her mouth and murmured, My God, could it be? I barked an order for security to take him out. But before I could finish, he pulled an old plastic card from his pocket. Faded company logo. The name on it, George Langford, co-founder. My heart stopped. Langford. The same last name as mine. The hall erupted. The noise crashed over me like thunder. My blood turned to ice. I screamed, That's impossible. This company is mine. He just smiled. Yes. Now it is. But did you forget the price you paid for it? I trembled. Not from fear. From the memory storming back. Back then, I was young, ambitious and ruthless. I forced him out of the board with a temporary name loan contract I thought no one would ever find. I buried it deep. And now, it stood before me. Alive. George stepped forward, addressing the crowd. Marcus was once a genius, he said. But he forgot something. Power isn't something you create. It's something you take, from others. I wanted to deny it. To shout. But my throat locked tight. All I could do was stand there and watch the faces around me shift. From admiration to doubt. From fear to disgust. Have you ever watched your empire start to crack before your eyes? I have. And the first crack was the voice of the man I thought I had erased forever. Subscribe now, because the next part will show you what real power games look like. I had never seen a meeting so cold. The air was thick, heavy, as if even the oxygen in the room had turned its back on me. George sat across from me, his fingers interlocked, calm, like he was the one running the meeting. And me, the man supposedly running an empire, was trembling. The boardroom was silent. No one dared to breathe too loudly. One of them finally whispered, Were you really the co-founder? George didn't answer immediately. He just pulled out a thin file, laid it on the table, and slid it toward me. The sound of the paper dragging across the wood sliced through the air like a blade. I looked down, and saw my own signature. The date. That year. A transfer agreement for the company's core patent. A document I thought I'd destroyed long ago. I looked up and saw George's smile. Not mocking. It was the smile of someone who had already won but hadn't bothered to say it yet. "You're still as sharp as ever, Marcus," he said slowly. "Except now you've forgotten how to use your brilliance to save people, instead of destroy them." My hands clenched. I shouted at him, demanding to know what he wanted. He tilted his head slightly. "Are you sure," he asked, "you're still the one running this company?" The question froze the entire room. I looked around. The people who once stood by me wouldn't meet my eyes. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my legal advisor: "Marcus, we have a problem. The board is reviewing the founding charter. He might still be a legal shareholder." My phone slipped from my hand. George stood, calmly brushed the dust off his jacket. "You wanted a game," he said. "Fine. I'll play by your rules. Just remember, I wrote them first." I couldn't breathe. No laughter. No light. Just the sensation of an empire cracking beneath my feet. And I didn't know whether it was collapsing, or if it was the beginning of a nightmare I'd never wake up from. Have you ever had the past come back to collect its debt? I'm living through the day mine did. The meeting room drowned in silence. Only the hum of the air conditioner remained, cold and sharp as a blade. George stood there, unmoving, as if time itself had frozen around him. I sat still, pretending to stay composed, though my hands had begun to shake. Then he opened another briefcase. A thick stack of documents, each page marked in red. "You really thought I was just an old janitor, didn't you?" His voice was low, echoing across the room. "You forgot I was the one who built the company's first financial system." He threw a file toward me. I opened it, and my heart nearly stopped. Inside were bank statements, investment records, and transaction logs I thought I'd erased forever. Numbers that could destroy me within hours if they went public. I glanced around. Whispers filled the room. The red light of the security camera blinked steadily in the corner. George smiled. "You know what's funny, Marcus? I didn't hack your system. I was never deleted from it." I shot to my feet, shouting that this was slander. But he just lifted a small remote and pressed a button. The screen behind me lit up. Files unfolded one after another, each one a confession in digital form. My name. My signature. Every secret transfer, every hidden account that had kept my empire standing. The room erupted. Employees pulled out their phones, recording. Someone was live streaming it to the company network. I lunged forward, yanking the cables from the wall, but it was too late. Everything was out. Every lie, every cover-up, spreading like fire. George stepped closer, placed a hand on my shoulder, and said quietly, "You thought power was making people fear you. But real power, Marcus, is making them see you exactly as you are." I stumbled back, pulse racing. And in that instant, I understood, he had never lost control. He'd only hidden it, waiting for the day I'd burn myself with my own arrogance. "You think power means money? Titles? The fear in people's eyes? Wrong. Real power is when a man can destroy you with nothing more than a smile." I once thought I'd reached the top. But it turns out, it was only the edge of the cliff. Ever since I took absolute control, everything around me began to crack, piece by piece. No one dared look me in the eye anymore. Even those who once swore they'd die for me now just bowed their heads in silence. I started hearing whispers behind my back. Fragmented sentences. Shifting glances. Every step I took down the hallway felt like walking through a minefield. That night, I got an anonymous call. A rough, raspy voice, like someone who had died and come back just to speak. "If you still trust anyone, you've already lost." I hung up, heart pounding like it was trying to break free. That voice haunted me all night. And when I woke up, part of the world I'd built was gone. My bank accounts were frozen. Partners cut all contact. And worse, videos, recordings from internal meetings began leaking online. I saw myself in them. Doing things. Saying things. But I had no memory of ever doing any of it. It felt like someone was tampering with my memories. I rushed to the company headquarters, but the guards had changed shifts. They looked at me like I was a stranger. My access card didn't work. I stood there, in the rain, staring through the glass walls at my own office, now occupied by someone else. My name had been wiped from every system. I didn't exist anymore. I went back to my apartment, only to find the door broken open. On the wall, scrawled in red paint, were the words, "Everything began with you, and it will end with you." I collapsed, laughing like a madman. So that was the truth, power had never belonged to me. It had only borrowed my body to survive. Outside, the rain poured harder. Each drop felt like it was striking my skull, my chest, my heart. I knew, this wasn't the end. This was just the moment everything fell apart, so something far worse could rise. I disappeared for several weeks. No one knew where I was, not even me. Fragments of memory, broken images, kept flashing through my mind. An empty room. The smell of disinfectant. Blinding white light. And a familiar voice, the voice of the one who betrayed me. I woke up in a desolate place, with only a phone in my pocket. On the screen, there was a single message: "You want to know who's really behind all this? Go back to where it all began." I clenched my fist, rage and fear mixing into one. I went back. The old house was still there, as if even time was afraid to touch it. The door was open, lights on inside, even though I'd cut the power long ago. I stepped in. On the table, there was a hard drive. A camera pointed straight at the sofa, the same spot where I used to sit every night. I plugged the drive into my laptop. Dozens of videos appeared. I was in all of them. But it wasn't me, it was a colder version, calculating, giving orders to people who had since vanished. A voice spoke behind me, "Now do you remember?" I turned around. It was him, the man I once called an ally. He smiled. "They didn't destroy you. You did it yourself. We just recorded it." I stepped back, heart racing. "You used to be the one pulling the strings," he said. "But you forgot, every puppet still has strings attached." I started laughing. A dry, broken laugh. So fate had never turned its back on me, it had just been waiting for me to hang myself. I took a step toward him. Each step pressed down on buried memories. "Thank you," I said, "for reminding me who I am." The laptop screen flickered. An audio file started playing by itself, restoration protocol initiated. I didn't know who said it, but my gut knew, this was my last chance. No more running. No more fear. It was time to take everything back, no matter the cost. If you're still here, hit that subscribe button. Because in the next part, fate is about to turn upside down. I returned to the company headquarters on a morning so foggy I couldn't even see the road beneath my feet. The place that once buzzed with hundreds of people now stood hollow and cold. No printers humming. No phones ringing. Only the sound of my footsteps echoing down an endless corridor. The conference room door was wide open. Wind swept through, scattering papers across the floor. On the wall, scrawled in dripping red paint, "Welcome back, boss." I froze for a moment. I didn't know who wrote it, or whether it was meant for me, or someone else. The main screen flickered on, even though I hadn't touched a thing. A video began to play. It was me, in a black suit, smiling. Footage from the day I signed the first contract with them. The day I thought I had finally reached true power. Then the video shifted. Faces of my team appeared one by one, and then vanished. One was fired. One resigned. One died in an accident. And me, still sitting in this very room, with the same smile frozen on my face. A smile I no longer recognized. I walked deeper into the office, to my old desk. The chair still had the same tear in the leather. The drawer still held the USB I'd hidden 2 years ago. I plugged it in. One single file appeared on the screen, Project Phoenix. I opened it. Inside was a full plan to rebuild the entire system, and something far more terrifying, a list titled "People to be Eliminated." I scrolled down. My name was at the very bottom. Next to it, "Completed." A chill shot down my spine. I realized I was no longer the one running this game. I was just a piece of the design. A cog in the machine I had built myself. One by one, the lights in the office began to turn off, until only the glow of the monitor remained. A deep voice came through the speakers, "Everything's ready for the final phase. You know what to do, don't you?" I clenched my fists, staring at my reflection in the glass. I didn't know anymore. Maybe, there was only one thing left to do. End it all.